to the Blogger Bowl Week 4 preview edition. We are running a two-man show today as Phil is busy being, I guess, a good father. We
He's
should
on daddy duty.
give him a pass on that one. Make a bit of it. College football is right up there and important with watching children. But like happens on every once in a while on Friday Brown Bag Bets, it's the inmates running the asylum here, Dan. Just you and me talking college football, and I always have fun when we do this. What's the home field apparel shirt you got?
Oh, we went with a little TCU.
TCU, I like it.
So hell,
now, are you allowed to wear a TCU shirt as a Texas fan?
Is that I'm allowed to do whatever I want. I'm a grown adult.
You know what I mean.
I have a very steadfast policy of no Texas A&M, no Oklahoma. When I had the subscription, I gave the Florida shirt to a friend who's a Florida fan. I don't really want to wear Florida. Don't want to wear Ohio State. And other than that, I'd probably wear just about – and no Baylor. But that's less about sports than about other things.
Yeah, more about
that's about it. I like college sports apparel. Obviously, I have a bunch of home field shirts, but I like comfortable, cool shirts, and I'm not that guy.
I was hoping my Tennessee home field shirt would be in by now, or the two of them that I bought, but they are not in. Hoping we get a Vols win this weekend so I could post it on Tuesday. I just had to go with my brand new Notre Dame Our Lady of Victory home field hoodie. These things are the most comfortable hoodies I've ever worn in my life, and it's not even close. So I can't get enough of these hoodies.
Yeah, I couldn't find my Tennessee shirt. I was too lazy to go find it, so I just grabbed. This was one of those kind of sitting on top of the pile in the drawer. So
I haven't looked at the hoodie selection for Tennessee, but if they win, I think I might have to get like a bright orange Tennessee hoodie. Maybe that'll be after.
I don't think they have any. I think they just have the normal.
Well, I did get some bright orange T-shirts, so we'll be fine. We'll be just fine with that. Should we start with a little Tennessee Florida action? Dive right into it. I think this is my game of the week, mainly because I fully bought into the Vols. But what are you looking? Obviously, I think you're looking forward to a little games on the smaller slate that we'll get to in our off the radar games. But man, rivalry matchup. It's 10.5 point spread. Tennessee has looked pretty darn good this year. They got that tough road win against Pitt. Florida after that win against Utah has looked no bueno. But still, this line feels like a trap to me. What about you?
It doesn't feel like a trap to me. This is where I think the line should probably be right around this. Like if I had to pick, I mean, to me, this is a game Tennessee absolutely should just go out and win. And I'll get into some of the stats and things that I looked up, but I love a good narrative. And I don't know that there's a bigger narrative game in college football coming up on the radar than this one right now. The Josh Heupel hire was met with a fair amount of skepticism, and I understand it. Like the Tennessee program had made a few bad hires back to back, or hires that didn't work out anyway. Yeah. They hired Josh Heupel. I think a lot of people wondered how it was going to translate to the SEC, his up-tempo, super fast style of offense. And it's been better than I think anyone could have reasonably imagined. But there's something that is staring this Tennessee program in the face. That is 1 win versus Florida since 2005, 0 wins against Alabama since 2006. And they've lost their last 5 games to Georgia, each of them by more than 21 points. So this is going to be the first opportunity we're going to kind of get to see whether or not Josh Heupel can have this as a 10-win program, a team that is on their way to being able to compete with Alabama and Georgia. Maybe a little bit unrealistic to expect that they can compete with those teams talent-wise. I think there's some matchup things with Alabama that we've talked about in the past that I kind of like, but talent-wise, they're not there. But this is a game that they absolutely have to win, a game that for their program, they have to go out and send a message, which is why maybe there's value in Florida in that regard. But the thing is, Florida legitimately one of the worst passing teams in the country, 127th in EPA per passing play, 126th in passing efficiency defense. That's one spot ahead of Iowa. So they're basically passing the ball at the level that Iowa is passing the ball. And they're 32 in EPA per pass play defense. So Florida's strength is running the ball. And Pitt did run for 5 yards per carry against Tennessee, but Florida gave up over 300 rushing yards last week against South Florida. No idea what to really make of this because of the rivalry element. Another important note, Cedric Tillman, the star wide receiver, not sure of his status. He is questionable with an injury he suffered in the game on Saturday. But gosh, if Tennessee's ever going to turn the tide in this rivalry at home in Knoxville with a ton of momentum against a team that is really scuffling right now, if not now, when?
Yeah, this seems like the time. They got them at home again, like you said this year. I think they were a pretty good team last year. They just had to go into a tough spot in the swamp, and getting off the schneid in a road game, in a road rivalry game like that's always tough. But they have it all lining up for them this year, which is why I don't just maybe it's the Tennessee skeptic in me, but it's just I think they should win. I think they should cover. I think this should be a fairly easy game for them. But weird things happen in this rivalry, and it's not the first time in this rivalry in the last 10, 12 years. I think would you say it was one win in the last 11 in that stretch where
no, it's more than that. It's one since 2005.
Oh God, it's one in the last 17. That's not good. But it's not the first time that we've kind of thought that this might be Tennessee's time to do it. This one does, to me, feel a little bit different. It does feel like they have the high-end talent. And I think Florida's one-dimensional enough where if Tennessee can kind of sell out to stop the run, I don't know what we've seen from Anthony Richardson throwing the ball this year that makes me believe that they can really beat them through the air. Tennessee not great defensively, but they're definitely improved from where they were last year. Man, I hope Tennessee comes out and does win this one big, does take care of business, because I think even if it's not really realistic to think they can beat Georgia, to think they can beat Alabama, if they're undefeated, who do they play first? Georgia first, right? Because Alabama.
No, they play Alabama. They play Alabama.
Alabama's always the third week in October, right?
Yeah, and I think they've for some reason they flipped the Auburn and Tennessee games on Georgia's schedule the next couple of years. Georgia plays Auburn coming up. I know that. So I think the Tennessee game might be right before they play Georgia Tech.
Okay.
I'll double check while you're finishing.
They could legitimately be undefeated if it is Alabama going into that Alabama game. It's not really that hard to think. And that division, that SEC East, I know Georgia's obviously their competition there, and that's going to be a much tougher game much tougher matchup, I should say, than Alabama. Like, I don't know. This feels like the chance for Tennessee to really say we're different. This program is different. This head coach is different. Josh Heupel can prove a lot of people wrong, but that rivalry aspect, the Florida just has their number aspect to this, makes me really, really nervous about that 10.5. I don't know. I think I like the over in it because I think both teams are going to score, and I do think Florida's offense is going to play a little bit better. But I think I'm in terms of my card, I think I'm going to end up staying away from this one overall.
Yeah, same. So they play Florida on Saturday. They have a bye week. They go to LSU, which I'd feel a lot dicier about that if they did have a bye week before it. And then they play Tennessee. They play Georgia on November 5th. They play Kentucky and Georgia back-to-back, which is an interesting stretch. So they play Florida. They have a cluster spot in their schedule. They play Florida, LSU, and Alabama in 3 straight games, and they play Kentucky and Georgia. They wrap the season Missouri, at South Carolina, at Vandy. So manageable from there. But yeah, I mean, I try to ignore the rivalry aspect of it because they're playing at home in this game. If this game were in the swamp, I'd feel a lot more concerned. But if they're not going to win it now, I just don't know when they're going to be able to win. I just think the potential is here. This could get ugly for Florida. If Florida's in a negative game state early, then this is going to be a bad time for them because they're just not geared to. They're not built to come back.
Obviously, every head coach's and team's plan of attack is to get out to a fast start and build up a quick lead. But Tennessee, man, if they can jump out to a 14-0, 17-0 lead early, this one's kind of over. I don't think Florida, because if they're up 17-0 or 17-3 in the first quarter, Tennessee's going to finish the game with about 34, 38 points. And I don't think Florida's going to be able to score that many. So the fast start for Tennessee is huge. And on the contrary, if Florida can kind of keep this game, muck it up a little bit early and keep it low scoring early, I think we're going to see that game come down to the wire.
I think that's a fair assessment. Moving on to the next game, we were going to have an SEC guest on, but he had to bail at the last minute. So we put the SEC games together. In Jerry World in Arlington, number 10 Arkansas, number 23 Texas A&M, a 7 p.m. Eastern kick. A&M a 2.5-point favorite. The total is 48.5. Bowl season has the Texas Bowl, which is played in Houston. This game is played in Arlington, and this is the I'd rather be playing Texas Bowl. But nevertheless, this is a rivalry that has been very strange since they moved it to the neutral site. From 2014 to 2019, so a span of 6 games, 3 went to overtime, 2 more were decided by 1 score. A&M did win in 1 blowout. In 2020, in the pandemic season, they just played at A&M, so A&M won that one fairly easily. And then last year, Arkansas, a 10-point win. A&M, something I was kind of thinking, this might actually line up to be an over spot in my mind. A&M is 105th in quality possessions allowed this year in the country. They give up, so 63% of the defensive possessions they give up are quality possessions, but they're 17th in points per quality drive allowed. So basically this is a bend but don't, they've been a bend but don't break kind of defense this year. On the flip side, Arkansas, they've been really good against the run defensively. They've only given up 2.23 yards per carry, but they're 85th in the country in passing efficiency defense while also amassing 17 sacks. So when they get home, they get home, but when they can't get pressure, they're giving up a lot of yards. PFF has them with the second worst tackling grade of the Power 5 schools. Their coverage grade is ranked 103rd out of 131 teams. So Arkansas has been dealing with secondary issues basically all season. Catalan, their star safety, is out all year. Miles Slusher has missed the last couple of games. He's a nickel corner. He might be back for this game, but this is the kind of game where it seems like we all kind of anticipate a rough, tough kind of game, and maybe there's an opportunity that some scoring is going to happen. A&M's the favorite. They've got the better roster top to bottom here, but man, if you're asking me in a game, in a rivalry that's a neutral site and weird things tend to happen, I like the team that I trust to be better coached and better prepared for this game. And for me, that's Arkansas.
Yeah, and I trust the team also with the better quarterback. And for me, that's Arkansas. I mean, it's SEC football, and if this one's going to get to be a little bit higher scoring than we might think, if we think it's going to open up a little bit more, I trust KJ Jefferson a lot more in that spot. I think offensively they kind of have more playmakers around him. A&M's been very good against the pass so far defensively. I think it's under 150 yards through the air allowed per game, but like they haven't. Tyler Van Dyke was a preseason Heisman, dark horse. But Miami's offense has really been more run centric, and they haven't really thrown the ball that much this year. So it's not like A&M's defense has been tested a ton. This is two very big a big test for Arkansas's offense. Can KJ Jefferson really? I think they're going to have to throw the ball with some consistency, and can he do that in this one? Can A&M's defense step up and, take down a pretty good quarterback that they have? I know Tyler Van Dyke, again, preseason Heisman dark horse, but hasn't really done too much this year. KJ Jefferson's been really good. Can A&M's defense carry them? Can the offense do enough? I tend to think no, because if you don't have a quarterback, which A&M doesn't really, I mean, they kind of have two. They've been bouncing around between King and Johnson. I don't really trust either one of them. I think Arkansas is the better player under center, and in a game this close, you look at A&M as 2.5-point favorites. I tend to lean towards the team with the better quarterback. I think they're pretty equally coached. I like Arkansas on this one. Again, I'm going to stay away from it on the card, because it's another one of those weird rivalry matchups where weird things tend to happen. You're in the neutral site, but I flip-flopped on this one like 5 different times this week, and I think I'm finally settling on Arkansas, talking myself into that one because of KJ Jefferson.
So I took this off of my card, and I will explain why at the end of the show when
we're in the cards.
But this was going to be on my card. It is not. So I will explain that once we get to the last part of the show.
Tease, folks.
That is a tease. That's what we call a tease in the TV business. The next game is the only other ranked versus ranked game on the slate this week. Number 5 Clemson at number 21 Wake Forest. This is a noon kickoff. Clemson is a 7.5-point favorite. The total 55.5. And I really respect the hell out of Dave Clawson, the head coach at Wake Forest, because did you know that Wake Forest, at least according to the 24/7 talent composite, has the least talented roster in the ACC?
I had no idea. Would never have guessed that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have probably said like Duke. I mean, Georgia Tech actually recruited, even though they lost everyone, recruited okay under Collins. Like, there's some options, but no, this is the lead, just again, based on recruiting rankings, the least talented roster in the ACC, and yet they've overachieved by any tangible measure that you can think of. Dave Clawson has got them to punch above their weight and then some, except when they play Clemson. They typically do not play super well against this team because the athletic difference is just too much to overcome. We've talked about in the preseason that Clemson, when they were winning national championships, did 3 things really well. They excelled at 3 position groups. It was quarterback, it was wide receiver, and it was on the defensive line. We know the wide receiver group is inexperienced, not great yet. We know the quarterback room is a little bit dicey, or a lot of bit dicey, depending on how you spin it. But the Clemson defensive line is as advertised. It is exceptionally good. And Brian Bresee, your heart goes out to him. Lost his sister last week. He missed the game to be with his family. He's expected to play. They're expected to get healthier on the defensive line. They are dealing with some injuries in the secondary, but they do appear to be getting healthier there. David Hale from ESPN pointed this out. In the first quarter of last year's game, Sam Hartman was sacked 4 times. 10 of their 13 plays went for a loss or for no gain. And then he went so far as to say the average recruiting position rank of Clemson's defensive line 4th, the average of Wake's offensive line 81st. It's a massive talent mismatch here. And that's why, even though we know the Clemson offense is not the most spectacular offense we've seen in college football, this is, again, they won by 21 last year at home. They scored 48 points, even though their offense wasn't very good. I love what Wake Forest does. I love the ability to punch above your weight as an underdog, but 7.5. This is not a spoiler. This one is on my card. I took Clemson, and I'm pretty comfortable with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see Sam Hartman come out and play well, and the story for him that he's back so quickly and feeling better is great. And I'm with you. Clemson's off. I know Clemson hasn't really played anybody. I mean, Georgia Tech is the toughest game on their schedule, but that offense has looked at least better. It looks like DJ's playing a little bit better this year than he did last year, and this is kind of their first real competition. It is a ranked opponent on the road, but I expect more of Clemson's offense, and that defense is so darn good. I don't see maybe Wake Forest get off to a quick start here, but I think Clemson in the end too much talent. I'd like to see them have kind of a steady dose of Will Shipley, because I think that will open things up a little bit for DJ, getting him a few more carries, getting him involved in the pass game. I think could be very effective. Some nice, easy, quick throws for DJ to kind of build up the confidence a little bit. And I think once you start stretching that field against Wake, I don't think Wake can keep up. I think Clemson's offense is going to be better. The defensive line is going to be in Sam Hartman's face all day, because it's outside of maybe Georgia, the best defensive line in the country. Clemson's just too much. I want like in my heart to take Wake. I want to think Wake can win this game. I want to think Sam Hartman can come out and play the game of his life and give Wake a chance. But I just, like you said, I think talent deficiency is just too much to overcome there. I think Clemson's too much.
I agree. So we will move on to our next game, the game of the week, the rightful site of College Game Day.
My Jayhawks.
Our Jayhawks, my Jayhawks. Again, I was the one who bet I was the one who bet their 2.5 over.
They were my most interesting story,
and they cashed that. They are undefeated. Duke is undefeated. This is a great basketball matchup, rolling into a actually very interesting college football game. Noon kick. Kansas, a 7.5 point favorite at home. 65.5 is the total. I think the big question that I have going into this game is, has the Kansas defense struggled because they've played 2 actual like football teams, West Virginia and Houston? JT Daniels, say whatever you will about him, is at least decent. Clayton Tune, pretty solid quarterback at Houston. But they are 112th in EPA per play defense. They are 93rd in the country in pass efficiency defense. So I wonder if that's a byproduct of just playing good teams, and maybe their defense is a little bit better. Maybe that is an area in which they are still lacking comparatively. They have schemed the hell out of their offense, and maybe they are not quite there on defense. On the flip side of things, Riley Leonard played minimally last year, but he has definitely improved. So that's going to provide a little bit of a challenge for this Kansas team. However, this offense that Kansas runs is fun. It's dynamic. There's a lot of misdirection. They do a lot of interesting things. They're going to spread you out. They're going to run some option. They're going to throw the ball. They're going to do all kinds of things. It's really good. And this is going to be a big step up in competition for this Duke team, regardless of how good Helinski looked against Northwestern. I wouldn't necessarily, despite the fact that Northwestern, I believe, is running the most plays per game on offense in the country. Like Pat Fitzgerald decided it was time for them to go up tempo, which might mean the sky is falling. Not exactly a stellar offense. Temple, their starting quarterback in that game, is now playing wide receiver. That's how bad things were going there. And NCA&T, a respectable but not great FCS program. So this is going to be a big step up in competition. No real feeling one way or another. If I was in a picks pool, I'd lay the 7.5 with Kansas. Think they probably win by like 10-14, but interested to see what Duke. I mean, I can't imagine, in a wild world, I cannot imagine that Duke just didn't start preparing for this game at all while they were getting ready for NCA&T. I'm assuming there was some significant work being done to get ready to play Kansas, but that's what you have to do when you play against this Jalen Daniels led offense. They're great, man. They're fun to watch.
I again, another game that I've kind of gone back and forth on, probably lean towards staying away because as fun as Kansas has been this year, it's still Kansas football, and laying 7.5 points against anybody is tough. But like, they've looked really good this year. They've scored 50. They're averaging over 50 points a game in their last two on the road against West Virginia, who, say what you want about them. Like you said, they're a Power 5 opponent. They're a team that went on the road against a ranked team early in Pitt. And if it's not for one of the worst drop passes, probably still, that game goes to overtime. They go to a Houston team that's essentially a Power 5 team. That's the most Power 5, non-Power 5 team in college football, probably at least one of them. Like, a very good opponent, a well-coached team there, and they just kind of, like, they've been kicking the crap out of these teams. They've been scoring. They've been doing whatever they want offensively. And, yeah, Northwestern was able to put up 28 points against Duke. I thought 31-23, I think, was the final. But whatever, Northwestern was able to move the ball a little bit and score there. Duke just hasn't really played anybody. Their toughest game is at Northwestern, who just got through losing to Southern Illinois. And as much as I like Northwestern, I hope they're good, they're not a very good football team this year. I think this is Duke's first real actual competition, whereas Kansas has been tested the last 2 weeks, and they've passed it. They've passed their two tests with flying colors. I think Jalen Daniels is the best player on the field. I really like Kansas, and I think my lean here is probably a Kansas team total over, whatever that might be. If there's 7, it's probably somewhere around 31.5 would be my guess, but I think that's probably my lean here.
20, 65.
I'm bad at math, Dan. Just off the top of my head.
Closer to 35.
34, maybe 33.5.
Higher than that. Hold on. I have FanDuel open. Let me see if they have any props listed yet. Any team props. Scoring. Totals, maybe? Kansas, the home team? Yeah. Kansas team total 37.5.
Okay. I still think I kind of like it.
Probably, yeah. I mean, if they got to 40 in this game, the over is 37.5 minus 118. So that's laying some juice for, a little bit there.
That's a high total.
Price shop it and see what you get for sure. I mean, that was the look I was most interested in. And I do remember now I saw it and I was like, I don't know if I want to pull the trigger on 38.5, even if they're scoring a lot of points. I'm just interested because we don't know if, again, on the flip side, we don't know if this Duke defense is good. They were up 21-0 on Northwestern, and Northwestern kind of clawed back into that game. There was nothing fluky about them winning that game.
No.
Like, they controlled the flow of that game for the most part against Northwestern and tried to give it away late. So we'll see there. The last of the games that we put on the radar, and I think Phil put this one on the radar, and then he came to the show today. It is an interesting one. Wisconsin at number 3, Ohio State. This is a 7:30 p.m. kickoff. Ohio State up to 18.5 point favorite, a total of 56.5. And I guess the big question for me is, what happened against Notre Dame just week 1 weirdness for Ohio State? Or was it Notre Dame having 9 months to prepare for the game? Or was there something in it that Wisconsin could take and use against Ohio State? That said, not particularly sure that it's going to matter all that much. Graham Mertz's efficiency is actually pretty high this year, but he's just graded as the 77th best quarterback in the country, according to PFF. They're 130th at EPA per pass play. He was 18 for 31 for 216 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick in the Washington State loss. This is a guy who threw 5 touchdowns in a Friday night game over a bad Illinois team during the pandemic season and got shouted out by his workout partner, Patrick Mahomes, and people thought he'd be something more than he is. I would say the only person who has been hyped for doing less but getting famous because they know Patrick Mahomes is Jackson Mahomes. So
I forgot he existed.
Maybe Wisconsin can keep this game close because of their defense, and I do think that the Jim Leonard against scheming against this Ohio State offense is really good. But I think we're also like, maybe Wisconsin can hang around and keep it close in this game. Like, I don't know that the quarterback situation is any less settled, is any better than what Notre Dame threw out. Maybe it is just because of the experience level.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, the best case scenario for me is Wisconsin hangs around in the first half, and that opens up some live betting Ohio State in second half opportunities.
Yeah, I think Ohio State kind of sees this one at home as that Notre Dame win no longer looks like the quality win it was at the time. And while Ohio State's not necessarily a team that's going to need those quality wins, if they win out, they win the Big Ten, they're in the playoff. I think this one for them is more of a little bit of a redo on the Notre Dame game, a chance to go up against say what you want about Notre Dame's defense or Notre Dame's offense, but their defense is solid. They played Ohio State's offense obviously very solidly. Jackson Smith and Jigba went down early, and Notre Dame was able to buckle down and kind of bottle them up a little bit. I think this is a chance for Ohio State 4 weeks into the year, kind of fully clicking, not coming off the preseason, not coming off camp. They have game speed. Their offense is kind of fully caught up. It always takes the offense a little bit longer than defense to catch up. I think this is their big chance to make a statement at home against a Wisconsin team that has the reputation of a great stout defense. And while I do think Jim Leonard does a great job there, I think this is Ohio State's chance to go out and really, make a big statement of we're actually really good. That Notre Dame game was, I don't want to call it a fluke, but like our offense is better than we showed. This is our big chance. This is us firing on all cylinders. I don't want to say it's quite like Ohio State, Michigan State of last year, but this feels like a statement type game for Ohio State for me.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think that might be going a bit far.
I'm not saying they're up 49-0.
The Wisconsin offense or the Wisconsin defense can frustrate Ohio State a little bit, I think, there. I think the thing that you always just kind of have to keep in mind is throwing out week 1 results, which I'll get to a little bit later also with one of my picks and my prize picks entry. I would like for this game to be competitive. Just doesn't really feel like it's going to be all that competitive once we get to the end of the game. Like maybe, like I said, for me, the best case scenario here is Wisconsin hanging around in the first half, and then Jim Knowles making the adjustments that he makes, Ohio State finding some success on offense, and live betting Ohio State. I don't know if I'm going to make it that long at the casino because I think we're going to the casino to watch the sports book at the casino to watch the Texas game, which is a 3:30 kick. I'm too old to stay out to the casino that late to watch that one, so I might have to just do it on the app. Nevertheless, off the radar games, I'll let you go first here. You wanted to talk about a Pac-12 showdown.
I do. Is this Pac-12? I'm checking. Is this a night game? No, it's 3:00. I wish this was Pac-12 after dark game because it feels like it should be.
No, that's the USC Oregon game.
That's on the Pac-12 network that we can't watch. I'm really intrigued by Washington State, Oregon. I think Oregon made a statement last week at home against BYU. They looked like a team that had already put the Georgia loss behind them, that they were just kind of over that. They obviously steamrolled. I think it was Incarnate or Eastern Washington in week 2, and then they just absolutely bulldozed a pretty darn good BYU team, a physical team, an experienced team that's well coached. Came into Eugene and they just absolutely bulldozed them. Oregon put themselves back on track for a Pac-12, a run at a Pac-12 title, I think, with that win. Obviously not a conference game, but got themselves playing at the level they need to be going into Pac-12 play. And you have a frisky, fun Washington State team that, credit to you and Phil, you guys have been talking about Cam Ward since the preseason, since our Pac-12 preview said this is exactly the type of team that Washington State could be. And that's what they've been so far. They went into Wisconsin, which is a tough place to play for a middling Power 5 school like Washington State, and they went and won that football game. And I think this is another really, really good test for Washington State. They get Oregon in. This is it's kind of a show me type game, I think, for both teams. I know last week was a lot of prove it, but I think this is a good Washington State team. If Oregon goes out and dominates physically, ready to kind of say like, all right, Oregon is legit. Oregon can compete with USC. They can compete with Utah for a Pac-12 championship. And if Washington State goes out and plays well and maybe takes Oregon down to the wire, maybe even beats them, you're kind of like, all right, like anytime Washington State's playing Utah or USC, those teams are on upset notice. So I think Washington State has the quarterback to pull off a win. I think they have the playmakers, but I think Oregon is just the better football team. And I'm excited to see kind of what style of football they can play. If they're going to have to ask Bo Nix to do too much, if they can keep running the ball successfully and not asking Bo Nix to do too much, which I think this is their key to the season. This is just a really, really fun, ideal, perfect Pac-12 matchup for me in this one. Great uniform combo too, like we talked about on Tuesday.
I just have a bad feeling that this is going to go poorly for Washington State. I mean, the game being at home certainly helps. I feel like the talent edge that Oregon's going to have is going to kind of lend something to this. But more so, I just want to bring up a quote that Dan Lanning had on his coach's show or the radio show or whatever that he did last night, talking about his philosophy on just playing football. He said, quote, I just want the ball out on the turf and let's play. Turf or grass. Last week we played a little bit early. Eggs, breakfast, and go whoop ass. So eggs, breakfast, and go whoop ass. Oregon doesn't have that on a T-shirt by the time they kick off on Saturday. Maybe they are going to lose.
If Oregon doesn't have that on a T-shirt, we'll get that on a T-shirt and sell it on the Blogger Bowl. Also, I just looked up the uniforms for Oregon this week. I love them. They're the all white, and they have the bright green numbers, the bright green wings. I'm a big fan of the uniform. I think these are the ones they wore when they beat Ohio State. Big fan of these. Love this uniform combo.
Which means I'm assuming Washington State is wearing their whatever shade of they call their shade of red.
Scarlet. They call it scarlet, I think, but like it's a different scarlet than who. Yeah, they're probably wearing their maroon with the gray helmets, which I also love.
It's red. It's all the same to me. My under the radar game is actually the game that I legitimately think might be the most intriguing game of the weekend. James Madison traveling to Appalachian State. You're talking about two teams who combined to win 5 FCS national championships. James Madison in 04 and 2016. App State won 3 in a row in 05, 06, and 07 before eventually making the jump to FBS, where they were joined this year by the Dukes. James Madison is 2-0 with a margin of victory of 46.5 points per game. They kicked the shit out of Middle Tennessee, who's not very good, but maybe a little bit better than people thought, and they beat Norfolk State, who's terrible. Just a quick trivia question for you, by the way. James Madison's 46.5 points per game margin of victory, average margin of victory, is the second best in the country. Do you know the only team with a higher average margin of victory this year than the James Madison Dukes? The only thing I'll say is Georgia was 4th. I assume that was
because Georgia won. Yeah,
Georgia took their foot off the gas against Mercer. They're up 31.
Their biggest game was like a 45, or I think their biggest one was like 45 points, right?
Something like that. I don't have it in front of me right now. Georgia is 4th. Michigan, there you go, bingo. Michigan, a 49.7 margin of victory because they have played absolutely nobody in the non-conference. So it's Michigan, it is James Madison, it is Minnesota 3rd, and then Georgia 4th. But yeah, I mean, James Madison is kicking the shit out of everyone they're playing. Todd Centeio, highest graded passing quarterback at PFF. Percy J. Obase and Kalen Black, a tandem running back group that's very good. Chris Thornton has 18 catches, 247 yards, and 5 touchdowns through 2 games. They are steamrolling everyone. They've steamrolled their first 2 opponents, but are obviously making a big step up in competition this week. But they played in week 1, they played in week 2, and then they got a bye week in week 3. So they've had 2 weeks to prepare for a massive statement opportunity. On the flip side of things, App State coming off an absolutely insane 2-week stretch, beating A&M, hosting game day, winning against Troy on the last Hail Mary on the last play of the game. So just a really interesting mid-major Sun Belt. This is the kind of game, like when we talked about it a couple weeks ago, adding a team like James Madison to the fray. You're adding a team that has a history of winning at the FCS level, regionally specific rivalries. I don't know that these two teams ever played a ton. I'd honestly have to go back and look because I don't know where James Madison, I don't know if they were always in the Colonial or not, but a team that's in Harrisonburg, Virginia, a team that's in Boone, North Carolina. So you kind of have that Eastern Seaboard kind of thing going on there. These are going to be really interesting and fun rivalries that the Sun Belt is just going to keep pumping out year in, year out. So could not be more excited for this game. It's unfortunately, I think it's at the same time as the Texas game. So hopefully I'll be able to watch it a little bit here and there. I'll come back, maybe watch a replay when I get home on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think this one's just going to be a lot of fun. And I don't want to call it a letdown spot for App State because maybe their game last week would have been considered that letdown spot. But coming off, I guess, a Hail Mary win, that thrilling win at home, like this could be another little bit of a letdown spot. And I don't think they can afford to let down against James Madison. Right. And like you said, really intrigued to see what this James Madison team is, if it's, just coming in hot against some bad opponents in weeks 1 and 2, or if they're a team that's like actually just making this jump right away and ready to compete to try and go win a conference. So this one should be, if you love college football, this is one of the smaller games that you should absolutely have your eye on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, and the 3:30 slate is there's a lot of really interesting games. Obviously, the Tennessee game, Tennessee and Florida, the Texas Tech games should be really interesting. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised you haven't brought up my name bar yet, by the way. But nevertheless, so we get to our bets, and how'd you do last week?
I think it was 4 and 5. I think all my totals were either the ones I won or lost were all within I don't think I won or lost one by more than 2 points. So it was very, there was only 1 or 2 bets that were dead from the beginning that never really had a chance. So it's 4 and 5, but it was an okay 4 and 5. I was in the right area code. How about you?
It was a 3 and 2 week for me. My stupid first half team total parlay hit thanks to to New Mexico State missing a 29-yard field goal. I went to bed at 3-1. Woke up a little disappointed to see North Dakota State was unable to pull off that win, and low key, pretty solid win for Arizona
get
that win over North Dakota State.
I was keeping an eye on that one because you were talking about, like, we were talking about on the show, and you kept saying, North Dakota State's going to go and win that game. That's their game. And I kept an eye on it. I think that was a fun football game. So good for the Cats.
Yeah, I mean, look, that program is ascending, and it probably was helped hasten, or at least like the fact that program looks like its trajectory is moving in the right direction. Probably just a small factor in Herm Edwards getting the axe at Arizona State. I have 4 plays on my card and then punted on one. Sadly, I can just go ahead and start because I gave out one on Tuesday. It was the West Virginia Tech under 52.5. I believe this number has
down to 50.5.
Yeah, I think it's down to 50.5, but I gave it out at 52.5 when you could have got it on Thursday or on Tuesday. So I'm going to have that one on the card. Clemson minus 7.5 at Wake Forest. Talked about that earlier. Kind of maybe not the smartest bet, although most of the numbers I've seen seem to think that they should be a touchdown favorite. But it's more just giving, as much as anything, giving a shout out to our boy, Hudson the dog, Lil Huddy. Give me Old Dominion minus 5.5 against Arkansas State. Old Dominion has played a pretty tough schedule for a group of 5, like Virginia Tech. They've played 2 ACC teams, Virginia Tech and Virginia. They won one, lost one on the last play of the game. Got beat down a little bit by East Carolina, who's not a bad AAC team. So Arkansas State is the worst team they've played so far.
ODU at home?
It's at home. It's at Old Dominion. So Arkansas State, one of the worst defenses in the country, second worst EPA per play defense, second worst pass efficiency defense, 3.89 yards per rush. 120th in defensive success rate, 75% of every possession that they play on defense ends in a quality possession. Old Dominion's offense has been really bad this year, but what cures a bad offense is playing a bad defense at home. I wouldn't play it at a number much higher than 5.5, maybe 6, but if I'll lay the 5.5 here with them. I rolled with it last week. I didn't give it out on the show because the number was way over what I bet it last week, but I'm going back to the well with Georgia Tech, or against Georgia Tech, as it were. They're playing Central Florida, a 20-point favorite at the Bounce House. Not only does Georgia Tech have their annual public execution game against Georgia, they played Ole Miss at home. Their other non-conference game, they traveled down to the Bounce House in Orlando to play Central Florida. We talked about it the other day. Lane Kiffin took pity on them and stopped throwing the ball because Jeff Collins is going to get fired. And when I talked about week 1 weirdness, it would not surprise me if it was just the fact that Georgia Tech was so feisty against Clemson was the fact they had 9 months to prepare for that game. It was a much bleaker, much sadder existence against Ole Miss, and they're going to play a UCF team should be able to move the ball at will on them there. My Prize Picks entry will come from that game too. But that's all I have. And my other thing. So the one other thing, remember I said I was going to have Arkansas in my card.
Always good to pay off on the tees.
Yes, I was going to do my stupid bet of the week again this week. And it was called the Because It's College Football Parlay. And that was Arkansas money line, Kansas State plus 12, and then Oregon State money line. Outlined why I like Arkansas. I don't have to go back into that. Kansas State lost to Tulane last week in ugly fashion, but for whatever reason, they seem to always play like shit the week before they play Oklahoma and then play them well. 2-2 in their last 4. I think one of the losses was a single score game. So Kansas State plus 12 is just one of those. Makes absolutely no sense because Oklahoma looks like a wagon, but Kansas State always plays well. And I loved the Oregon State play, but literally
it's down to 5.5 now.
Yeah, it's down to 5.5. Literally everybody in the world loves them. Since 2019, Oregon State is 16-6 against the spread as an underdog with 10 outright wins. Since 2019, no coach has more outright wins as an underdog than Jonathan Smith. That's via our friend Chris Felica. So I was like, man, okay, I get it. And everyone loves them to the point where at least at Caesars, more money has been wagered on Oregon State to cover the spread versus number 7 USC than any college football or NFL game so far this week. The book has taken a $110,000 bet on Oregon State, plus several 5-figure wagers on the Beavers to cover. I know some sharp people are into Oregon State in this, so that's the one reason why I'm not just hammering the opposite other side of this, but it has become total stay away for me.
Yeah.
This feels like the kind of game that Oregon State always wins, but man, everybody in the world loves it. So I'm going to stay off of it. So to recap real quick, for those of you who might have tuned out because I talk too much, West Virginia and Virginia Tech under 52.5, which you probably can't get anymore. Clemson minus 7.5, Old Dominion minus 5.5, Central Florida minus 20 against Georgia Tech. I probably should take some underdogs. I don't care. What do you got? Well, first off, how many do you?
I'm down to 8 this week.
Okay,
I was at 7, but I added 1 from your card. I added Old Dominion -5.5 from your card because I think we're a Hudson show. I'm going to back now. The fact that they're at home, if they're on the road, I probably wouldn't have touched it, but they're at home. We'll take them. I'm going to add that to the card. So I'm starting there with Old Dominion laying the 5.5. In Michigan, Maryland, I'm going to take the over 64.5. And it's by far the best offense Michigan's seen all year. And I think their defense is solid, but I don't think it's as good as it was last year. And I don't think that defense has been tested yet. I think they'll be tested a little bit early in this one. And I think that offense will be just fine. I think Michigan wins that one like 45-31, something along the lines of that. I'm going to go Baylor +2.5 at Iowa State. It's a fishy line to me, but I just think I've been very impressed with Baylor so far this year. I don't love the pick, but I just don't see why they're an underdog in that game. I saw Iowa State at Iowa, and nothing about it impressed me other than that they were able to steal a win there. I'm gonna roll the dice there with Baylor. I'm with you on the Texas Tech under 61.5. I think that one's a little bit lower scoring than we're used to seeing. Going under 34.5 in Iowa and Rutgers. We got the two best punters in college football. We got Iowa's defense. I really like that game going under fairly easily. I'm just going to keep betting Iowa unders until we get one that's in the 20s. I'm going to go actually opposite you on Oklahoma, Kansas State. I'm going to take Oklahoma -12. I think it's down far enough. I think it was at 14.5 this week when we were looking at it on Tuesday. Very glad I waited. I just think this is a different Oklahoma team with a different mindset, with a different head coach. And I think the Kansas State spell left with Lincoln Riley. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I can live with that. Laying the 12 with Oklahoma, I just think they're the much better football team. I am going to go with Ohio State laying the 18.5 at home against Wisconsin. Going over 70.5 in the USC-Oregon State game. I think there's a lot of points scored in that one. I think Oregon State keeps up for a little while. And this is, I don't want to say the first test USC's defense faced, but they got Jake Haener at home for a half with a Fresno State team that really isn't as good as we thought, and that offense isn't as efficient as we thought without Kalen DeBoer. This is a tough test for a USC defense that's been, criticized quite a bit and I guess questioned coming into this year. And that is it for my card. That's what I got.
All right, so a couple of things. First and foremost, if you see my name bar, it says Quinn Ewers is a full kit wanker. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a soccer thing, obviously, because it involves the word kit and the word wanker. But it's basically someone who wears a fan who wears a full uniform to a sporting event. So in soccer, it's someone who wears the jersey, the shorts, the long socks, the shin pads, whatever. There was a guy, I think it was at the Lions game I saw in week 1 in a full Detroit Lions.
Oh, there's a lot of that. That's an NFL
everything.
thing. It's
a guy who wears the full baseball uniform, brings the glove, everything. Quinn Ewers, it's been going around on social media. Quinn Ewers is going to take the trip to Lubbock and dress out for the Texas Tech game. Everyone's wondering if he's going to come back early. Well, he was dressed out last week for the UTSA game. The only thing that's different is that this is a road game, but if anything, it's probably a smokescreen. I don't think Quinn Ewers is going to come back on 2 weeks from a 4 to 6 week injury. So at this point, he's a full kit wanker.
I have Phil's card too. If we should get to that, he did text it to me. Good on Phil to text in his picks to this show.
Does he have a pick on the Iowa State Baylor game?
He does not.
So real quick, this was from Chris Felica as well, because you took Baylor, right? I'm not mistaken.
I took Baylor, getting the 2.5.
Getting the 2.5. This is from Felica again. Under Matt Campbell, Iowa State has been involved in 17 games in which the spread was within 3.5 points either side. So they were either -3.5 inside, -3.5 or +3.5. They are 5-12 in those 17 games in that span. In that span, since 2016, only 4 coaches have a worse winning percentage in close spread games with a minimum of 10 games played. I will give you an opportunity if you can guess.
Repeat that one more time for me. Sorry, there's a lot of numbers going around.
Yes. So games that are within 3.5, a spread of 3.5 points on either side. So the team is either between +3.5 or -3.5. Matt Campbell is 5-12. Only 4 coaches have a worse winning percentage in these close spread games. 2 of them are at the school still. 2 of them are not, which probably gives away one of the answers. So I'll see if you can guess 2, because one should be fairly obvious if I just gave away that 2 of them are not still at the school.
It's one with Brian Kelly?
No.
Oh, yeah. He hasn't been, now that I think about it, he wasn't in many 3.5 point games either way.
Right.
They were either heavy favorites or heavy dogs.
Right.
Scott Frost?
Bingo. Scott Frost is one of them. He was 4-10 in such games.
Good God. So there's two. So I have one more. That's
two who are still at their schools. One I can't imagine you will guess. The two who are still in their schools, you probably won't guess. I will give you a very
Mike Gundy.
No, he is not. I'll give you a guess. The other one who's not still coaching college is a head coach, but is not in college.
Matt Rule?
No.
He's a head coach. Is he back in high school?
Nope. You're on the right track.
Oh, okay. Well, now I have to think of who's a college head coach in the pros. I'm blanking.
Cliff Kingsbury.
Oh,
1-9. The other two, Rick Stockstill, the coach at Middle Tennessee, and then Tom Allen is 3-8 at Indiana.
Okay.
So that just all of that trivia and whatever to support your thought on the Baylor game. So what is Phil rolling with?
That supports my trends there, and
that's why I did that bit.
I appreciate that, and obviously, we've talked about it a million times. I love Dave Aranda. I think he's a great football coach.
He is,
I think Matt Campbell's a a very good football coach too. I think Dave Aranda is one of the best coaches in the country, and I think they figure out a way to win that game. I don't see them dropping their second game this early in the season. Phil's got 4 plays. Shockingly, one of them includes Florida State, his Knowles. He's going Florida State, Boston College over 48.5.
Okay.
Arkansas, Texas A&M. He's taken Arkansas plus the 2.5. Iowa minus 7.5 at Rutgers, and LSU, New Mexico over 45.5. My guess is Phil thinks LSU puts up a ton of points.
Like they win 42-7 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Exactly. So that's Phil's card.
Man, that Florida State game the other night, Jordan Travis gets hurt. It's like, oh man, whatever. And then that other kid comes in, Rodemaker comes in, and God bless him. No idea where the ball is going to go at any point, like whether it's going to go to one of his guys or one of the guys on the other team. But that kid is just going to throw the hell out of the football. That kid is raring back, and just he's like the 22-year-old pitcher who gets called up from AA, who throws 102 miles an hour and doesn't have a secondary pitch.
Well, I was going to say it reminds me a lot of Rex Grossman. Just like, I'm going deep. Like if they catch it, great. Like I'm just throwing the ball.
And I was like, man, where's this kid been? And then I was kind of like reading some stuff from Florida State fans, and they're like, yeah, this guy was terrible, but like this is the best he's ever played.
Nice.
So yeah, there was one other game, Arkansas. Oh, Phil, I'm gonna look in the camera. Phil, man up and just take Arkansas money line.
Do it, Phil.
And then
we know you're watching.
The other two we had? Sorry, I was thinking about the Florida State game, and the kid was the Rodemaker kid was on my brain.
I don't remember.
Okay. No, I said what were Phil's two other.
Sorry. Iowa State.
Iowa. We haven't even talked about it. Shout out to Patrick McCann, who is one of our viewers, listeners, and fans of the Deep Dive, who is in the Deep Dive DGen Discord, which if you go to the Deep Dive Pod Twitter page, you can find a link to our Discord in there. He called, and very accurately called, the Iowa Rutgers game features the CJ Stroud versus Bryce Young of punters. Adam Korsak, the Rutgers punter, was the preseason first team All-American punter. He has not allowed a touchback in something like 136 punts. And then Torrey Taylor is averaging like 48 yards per punt for Iowa. So
can I get like a Torrey Taylor in New York Heisman finalist bet?
Eventually Iowa's going to have the game where they force 5 turnovers and get a defensive score, and they're going to hit the over by themselves. But like 35.5, it's just like Iowa 17, Rutgers 10. Even like Iowa 21, Rutgers 10, and you come under, and you come in.
I think this is going to be like Iowa 17, Rutgers 6 or 9 or something like that. No one's going to score.
I don't think Rutgers is going to score a lot of points in that game. I'm starting to, and Iowa's getting a little bit healthier at their skill positions. They got 2 receivers back and a running back for the Nevada game, in which things seem to be going fairly well for them. And then the weather.
Should we get prize picks?
Rutgers team total 12.5. Man, unofficially putting that on the card. Rutgers under 12.5. All right, prize picks. Sorry, I've been wasting time.
No, you're not wasting time at all.
Oh, Phil sent us. I loved Phil's. Man, I loved it.
Yeah, Phil's is good.
Yeah.
Phil's is good. So you go ahead and start. I'm going to pull up mine, and I got Phil's here too.
All right. So I went with John.
Same line.
I went with John Rice Plumlee, the quarterback at Central Florida, under 250.5 passing yards against Georgia Tech. I spent some time taking a dump on how bad Georgia Tech is, but they haven't even allowed 250 passing yards this year because teams don't have to throw the ball on them to score. Clemson or Ole Miss they just took mercy on them and just ran at will on Georgia Tech. And I don't think that Gus Malzahn particularly wants to go out and throw. So unless they get some big chunk plays in the passing game, I just don't see any reason why Central Florida is going to have to pass the ball a lot in that game to win by a lot. So I'm going to go under John Rice Plumlee, under 250.5 passing yards.
Love Phil's. He's taking Adrian Martinez, Kansas State quarterback, over half an interception. I mean, whether or not you think Kansas State is going to play well in this game, Adrian Martinez is probably going to have to throw a little bit, and Oklahoma's defense is miles ahead of where they were last year. They're playing very, very good football. They're probably going to take the ball away a couple times from Kansas State, and Adrian Martinez likes to give the ball away to the other team, so I think that's a very, very good bet from Phil. Mine is a receptions bet that we tried to sneak in last week, but they took it off the board. No, did we? I don't remember if we got it. I'm going Ronnie Bell over 5 receptions. Did we get that in? Was that in the one we
took
won?
It off the no. We
That's right. Yeah,
we agreed to it as our pick, as our community pick, and then when we went to enter it, he was off the board.
Yeah, going Ronnie Bell over 5 receptions. Since JJ McCarthy's taken over, he's got 6 and he's got 7. I think they're going to. Those are in 2 games against Hawaii and Connecticut, where like Dan was talking about with UCF. Probably don't really have to throw much in the second half in those. I think they're going to have to throw a little bit longer against Maryland. Ronnie Bell's their best receiver. He's really, really good. Clearly has a rapport with J.J. McCarthy. And as a young starting quarterback, usually tend to look to those reliable, senior, very talented receivers. I like Ronnie Bell to have 6, 7, 8 receptions in this one against Maryland. So that is that's our prize picks entry.
How did you and Phil do? I mind Anthony Richardson didn't run the ball well.
I think we hit maybe one of the 3 last week. It did not go well for us.
Did not go.
But hey, we're 1-1, and in prize picks money, you need to go like 1 and.
Yeah, you have to win 1 out of every 5.
1 out of every 4, 1 out of every 5. Yeah. So we'll get back on the board this week.
Yeah, so I didn't even see Adrian Martinez when I was trying to find one, so I went to go see if they had added a bunch more stuff, and they have. Another look that I like that I'm going to keep beating the drum on as long as Quinn Ewers is out. Roschon Johnson, Texas running back, he's at 43.5 rush yards. I would consider an over on that one. Texas only ran the wild. I was a little surprised they only ran the Wildcat for really 1 or 2 possessions against UTSA. I thought they'd run it a lot more. The one drive they did run it, they were very successful with it. I think they were trying to keep things a little bit close to the chest against UTSA as much as they could, because they're going to have to try to manage some tough conference games without Quinn Ewers unless his shoulder is magically healed, which I don't think it has. So Roschon Johnson, 43.5. I'm not going to say that we should add it to our total, but if you're out there looking for prize picks entries, that's another one I think is worth considering.
We can add it to the total if you're feeling it. You tell me. We'll leave that one up to you. We'll put in that. We won't put in the prize picks entry. We'll probably put it. I'll put it in now. We do have to post it on Saturday. Saturday we'll post it though in the prize picks Discord. The 4for4 Discord with the prize picks channel there. So go sign up for that. I think there's links for it in the 4for4 Twitter account. Connor was asking me to give that one out. So go check them out. Go check out their Discord. That's where you can find all of the BetSperts Cruise prize picks entries. And those guys are pretty darn good at it. And if you're into golf betting, you should really be in that Discord, because boy, is the BetSperts golf team good at what they do. They had themselves.
Those guys are a lot better, and 4for4 are a lot better at this than we are.
Yeah, we're getting better at it, but we're shooting from the hip a little bit more. Those are guys who have been doing this for quite some time. So go ahead and give those guys a follow too. But for now, that's all I got, Dan.
Yeah, man. It was a good one. We'll see what's going to happen. Go Irish, go Horns, go all of our bets, and hopefully Phil can come back to carry the show next week.
Go Holy Cross Crusaders.
Holy Cross, go Crusaders.
We have to mention them every show.
Go Crusaders. And we will talk to you guys on Tuesday.